Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We accomplish that mission by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show and let them know that they can listen on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Audible, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have 3 amazing guests for you today. Celebrating her brand new YA novel, Wild About You, Kaitlin Hill will be joining us first. A little bit later on in the show, we'll be meeting Dr. Namita Gandhi, who will be here to celebrate Immune Heroes. And later in the show, we're going to listen back to, I think, my first interview with an author of a romance novel, Jen Malone. She's celebrating changes in latitude. Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Kentucky. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new romance novel for young adults. It's called Wild About You. Please welcome to the show, Kaitlin Hill. Hey, Kaitlin, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I have to tell you, romance novels, there's lots of them in my house, but they're none that I've read. My wife is a big fan. So we have lots of pictures of Fabio on the covers of all these books. But
yeah.
But YA romance is not my thing. So tell us about Wild About You and tell us about YA romance novels.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I love reading YA still as an adult, and I think a lot of adults do. When I was a bookseller, there was some statistic we had about somewhere in the range of the 70 to 80% of YA readers estimated were actually adults, at that time anyway, as of, 5 years ago. And yeah, YA romance, I think, is just a really fun category in that it's stories about first love or, all the experiences you have with love and dating as a teenager while you're still figuring out what it is you want and who you are, and in addition to what you want in a partner and how to communicate and things like that. So it's a really fun topic to explore in that age range. And Wild About You takes place actually the year after my main character's first year of college, or summer after my main character's first year of college. So it's sort of an upper YA story. The main characters are 19. And that time is it's becoming more common to represent college in YA, but is still relatively new in terms of publishers taking that on. But I think it's an age group that's been kind of ignored in publishing for a while. So I enjoy college YA and exploring the experiences you have through that, because it's such an interesting time. In my main character's case, she did not have a good first year of college and is at a real turning point of, can I even afford to go back? Which is how she finds herself doing this kind of kooky reality show setup, which is my fictional reality show in the book based in kind of the Amazing Race inspiration, but set on the Appalachian Trail. And the main character, Natalie, is competing in these various wilderness challenges on a race to win a big scholarship to help her pay for school. And her partner in this, that she's randomly paired up with, seems on the surface like a total opposite to her personality. He's very gruff and not a big talker and very outdoorsy, and she's very kind of into makeup and skincare, and theater is her passion, and she is not really equipped for camping and things like that, but is giving it a try anyway. So they're kind of skeptical about each other at the start, but are going to have to work together to try to win this scholarship.
What a neat story.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, it makes perfect sense to kind of explore these topics. College, the first couple of years of college is very difficult, I think, for most students. It's a very challenging time.
Definitely. And she's a first-generation college student, so she does not have a ton of familial support, which is not to say that first-generation college students don't in general, but just her relationship with her parents is not great, and they're not very supportive of her going to college. So she's kind of navigating a lot of this on her own and trying to handle it all, but finding that she's having some mental health struggles and kind of is in denial about that. So it's kind of about that journey with figuring out how to handle it all and how to ask for help or accept help, or admit you're struggling even, while also figuring out, can I keep doing this on my own? Can I find a way to keep paying for school? And obviously going on a reality show is not a foolproof recommended method for getting money for college, but that's where she finds herself right now.
We've talked about it here on the show a lot. It really is criminal what college kids are facing these days in terms of the cost of college. Here in Boston, there are a couple of schools that are up close to $90,000 a year. And, a lot of these colleges are very quick to point out, well, no, there's only a few kids who pay the whole tuition, and we get lots of financial aid. But at $90,000, even if you give a kid half a ride, you're talking about $45,000, $50,000, and then you add on books on top of that and living expenses, and now it's kids are graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and there's absolutely no excuse for it. It's I just want to say it. It's a crime. It shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I feel like is not something I've read about a lot in fiction, but is like such a pressing thing for young adults. And the pressure of, I don't know, at least in like the community that I grew up in, there was so much pressure to go to college in the first place. The option to not go was there, but there's so much social pressure to just, everyone else is going to college in my, social sphere. So I had to apply and do it. And it's just kind of accepted as your, lot that you will have to pay a lot, take out a lot of loans, or try to get scholarships. And those are limited, or some will be merit-based and some are just random lottery. And it's just like, all of that is overwhelming enough when you have a family who's been through it before. Either you're not the first kid in the family who's gone to college, or your parents have gone and they kind of have some understanding, even though it was like different in their generation. But let alone if you have a family that doesn't have a lot of familiarity with this and trying to navigate it all alone with school counselors. It's just so daunting. And, and like being able to do that feels like a privilege rather than a right to get an education. And, it's a broken system for sure.
It certainly is. And again, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Parents are partly responsible for that pressure because from a very young age, we talk to kids about, you got to do great in school so you can get into a good college. And so that's putting pressure on them. And we don't talk to the kids about, hey, you got to make a choice. I was really lucky because I knew I wasn't going to have a big pile of money for my kids because we sent our kids to Catholic school. And so I started speaking to my kids at a very young age. My daughter chose to go to one of those very expensive colleges in Boston. However, she went to the online degree program, which worked out to be $15,000 a year as opposed to $80,000 a year.
Wow.
It gave her the opportunity to work, and so she was able to pay as she went, and she was working in the industry that she wanted to get into, so she graduated with contacts and 4 years of experience. But even more so, to your point about pressure, she experienced a lot of pressure from her counselors and high school teachers. Why you're making such a mistake. You're going to miss out on the college experience and blah, blah, blah. And my daughter is a very wise young woman because she said, college experience, what? Getting drunk, throwing up, So I'm really happy for her. My son also made some good choices when it came to college. I'm mentioning this because I think it's so important for parents to be aware of it and to help our kids make those really important decisions so they don't put themselves behind the 8 ball when they're graduating.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important too to consider all the options, and that traditional 4-year college isn't for everybody. In my last book, there was one of the main characters wasn't even wanting to go to college at all, wanted to kind of go into the workplace and apprenticeship route. And I don't know, I think it's just important to be open to different possibilities and different paths. In the case of this book, it's 2 kids who are going to stay in college. They want to keep going, but it's hard. And there's a lot of challenges, not just with money, but just with, as the main character experiences, living on your own for the first time and being just so overwhelmed by having to do classes and be more independent. And she has a job and balance it all. And the mental load of that is a lot.
And throw into those challenges is a new romance.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's something so interesting about the romance genre too. That maybe people who don't read it as much aren't as familiar with often, that it's not, I mean, the love story is central to the plot. That's romance for sure. But often the main character and the love interest, or 2 main characters, or whatever you frame it as, are going on their own individual journeys as well. And there's a lot about what they're struggling with on their own and figuring out how to still have love and happiness alongside your own personal challenges, and that you don't have to be a completely whole, fixed, self-actualized, totally great feeling person to be able to find a partner and have a relationship and have that kind of happiness in your life, even if everything else is not going perfectly. Your partner's not going to be perfect either, and they're going to have their struggles too. And finding how you work together on that when you're kind of taken by surprise with these feelings. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a fun part. Obviously, fun main point of the plot is that they are meeting each other and unexpectedly growing feelings for each other. Neither of them got into this to find a relationship by any means. But yeah, end up finding that maybe they have more in common and care about each other more than they expected as they go. And hopefully that's not really a spoiler, as you see on the cover. Basically, this is a romance.
Yeah. Hey, reading with your kids, our podcast is all about encouraging families to read together. And of course, we really encourage families to continue to read together, co-read books when their kids become independent readers and move on to middle grade and YA. What kind of conversations do you think a young college student can have with their parents if they're co-reading Wild About You?
Yeah, I definitely think it would open up some conversations about mental health that can be really hard to have just out of the blue with your parents or with your kids. And it can be uncomfortable to have, but I think framed in the experiences of this fictional character you're reading about, that might be like a good entry point to talk about some more difficult subjects. So Natalie, the main character, is dealing with a lot of anxiety that's kind of gotten to a point of interfering with her ability to do a lot. It affects her every day, like panic attacks take her by surprise, and just she feels kind of like she's crumbling, and from the pressure of everything that she's dealt with in her first year of school. And yeah, I think especially if kids and parents aren't in the same place physically, like a kid has gone to school far away and they don't see their parent all the time, it'll be even harder to keep your parent updated on how you're doing emotionally, mentally, and reading a book together about something like this, I think, could be really helpful, special, important to open up those kinds of conversations. Like, hey, have you experienced anything like this? For a parent to ask their kid, or a kid to ask their parent if they relate at all from when they were in school or anything like that, to just really feeling the pressure and not feeling like you have a lot of support. And yeah, it can be really vulnerable and difficult to admit that you are struggling. But I've always found in my own mental health journey that as soon as I open up and do share, whether it's with a parent or friend or anyone else, it is so freeing and takes this weight off. And I think it can only get better from being talked about and shared. And that's true of any kind of mental health struggle, I think, in destigmatizing that kind of conversation. Just, yeah, being able to open up and talk about these things more is pretty much always a positive, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm curious, a parent, and it must be incredibly difficult for a parent whose kid is halfway across the continent at a school, and you're not calling as much, and you might get a text here and there, but your kid is hurting. I'm imagining that if you send your kid a book, everything you need to know about anxiety, might not be received as openly as, getting Wild About You. Hey, I heard about this book, and let's read it together. And then go from conversations from there.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And yeah, the beauty of fiction is that kind of experience where you don't feel like, oh, I'm going to go read a textbook about something I'm experiencing, because that can be extremely daunting. Not a textbook literally, but something that looks kind of like maybe intense nonfiction on the subject might not be, definitely wouldn't have been as enticing to me as a college student as, oh, I'm going to pick up a love story and it's going to be kind of an escape and fun. And it is, for sure. There's this book, I've definitely emphasized the mental health aspects, but it's funny and light and fun, for the bulk of it, honestly. And yeah, so being able to get that escape, but also, pick up on things that the characters are experiencing and that might resonate with you, on an emotional level. And yeah, that is, I think, much more approachable for younger readers, honestly, in terms of confronting these topics, is seeing it in your peers, even if they're fictional, in stories like mine, or there's so much good YA that talks about mental health topics nowadays. Just the recommendations are endless, honestly.
And this sounds, what you've described sounds like a really fun read. You know, the characters are very different from each other, and being part of a reality show and that whole kind of craziness and being up on the Appalachian Trail, it just sounds like a fun romp. Isn't that how they say?
Yes. Yes. I think literally that word might be used somewhere in the copy. So,
so did you always imagine yourself being a writer of YA books and romance books?
I did not. I didn't know what I wanted to do for the longest time, even kind of all through college. I was unsure. I went to a small liberal arts school where it was very like, study what you love and the rest will work itself out career-wise, which was fine up until like senior year, when I was like, okay,
what am I going to do?
Something, time for something to work itself out. But I studied sociology and anthropology. I was always just so interested in people and their stories and why people do the things they do. And I've always just been a big observer of like human nature. I think that's a lot of why I'm so into reality TV and have been for so long, is it's such an interesting look into people's lives that you just don't get from your actual real life. And yeah, it was sort of towards the end of my senior year that I got back into reading for fun after being really like focused on school for so long and only really reading school texts, and sort of dove really hard into recent YA and romance that I'd missed in the last few years while not reading for fun. And it was really eye-opening, and started to think at the same time I had started writing a little bit in a travel blog kind of way while I'd done some study abroad in college, and got a lot of really lovely feedback from just the friends and family who read it. So I was kind of doing that at the same time, getting back into reading, loving fiction and stories, and kind of put those things together and thought, what if I could write something like this? And it all just kind of happened from there over a few years after of trial and error and figuring out my writing style and what kind of stories I wanted to tell and how to even pursue traditional publishing. And yeah, working random jobs while I was doing that, but eventually led to getting an agent and a book deal, and it's all happened since then. Just I've been very, very fortunate, but I love telling love stories, and kind of in hindsight, it all makes sense that like all along I loved storytelling and entertaining, and being able to put all these observations about people that I am always making into stories and characters that I create and worlds that I create myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm wondering if there's any chance that the idea for your reality show that you talk about in the book will actually become a reality show.
That would be wild, and pun intended. Who even knows? That would be funny. But there's so many. I'm such a reality TV watcher. There's just so many out there with stranger concepts than this that it would not be it would not be that surprising if something like this got made eventually.
Well, that would be good. We had a guest on the show not too long ago who was part of Below Deck Mediterranean.
Oh my gosh.
And,
I love Below Deck.
Oh, great. Well, I guess she was one of the guests who was on the boat in season 5, and I wish I could remember her name off the top of my head, but I'm old and these things fall out of my head really easily.
Okay.
Tell us where we can go to find out more about Wild About You and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, Wild About You will be out May 21st, and it'll be anywhere books are sold, but my website is theKaitlinHill.com, and I'm on all social media as @theKaitlinHill, and yeah, it'll be in stores, online. I'm doing a few book tour events coming up, Lexington, going to Knoxville, Tennessee, St. Louis, Chicago. So hopefully find some of you at some of those. And other than that, going to keep writing and working on the next YA.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Wild About You. It is a YA romance novel from our guest, Kaitlin Hill. Kaitlin, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from the beautiful state of California. Our guest is here today to celebrate. Her new book is called Immune Heroes. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Namita Gandhi. Hey, Dr. Namita, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you. Talking about immunity and how we can build up our immunity and who are the heroes. That's kind of like the one thing I didn't hear a lot about during the pandemic, which kind of confused me.
That's true. They safeguard us all the time. And that's, I grew up listening and watching a lot of the Super Friends. And when I started thinking about the immune system, they are our super friends, inside our body. And sometimes they're confused, but most of the time they keep us safe.
Yeah. So what characters are we going to meet in Immune Heroes?
So our, T-cell, our helper T-cell, who I feel like he's kind of an orchestrator. He's a problem solver and he does a lot. And so he is Captain T. I also grew up watching a lot of Mr. T. And so our Captain T has to have a mohawk, as he does. His T-cell receptor is his little mohawk. So you'll meet Captain T and he's orchestrating the crew. But then my favorite character is Dr. B-cell. She is an expert. She has an incredible memory. And she also is probably the heroine of the story.
Cool. Now I gotta ask, does Dr. T go around saying, "I pity the flu. I pity the flu"?
Hey, I should use that in the next book. That's really excellent.
Well, I think that this is so important. Again, because of partly because of the pandemic, but I don't know if it's just American society or if it's the world in general. We don't seem to worry about our health until we don't have it, and there's so many things that we can do to kind of help build up our immunity. And I think that this is a message, anything from being out in the sun to get that vitamin D to exercising, to build strong muscles and bones and making healthy choices when we eat. I think it's just so important for us to start talking to our kids about it.
Absolutely. And actually, I've lived in Asia and traveled a lot of the Asian countries as well. And so one thing I came back from my travels is feeling that health is universal. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about, the science behind it, because maybe if you can understand pieces of it, it would help you take care of yourself better. So absolutely, it is universal. And I think actually in some ways we do a lot better in the U.S. than in other countries. We are having a real conscious mind about food. I mean, it's discussed a lot. But we also know sleep is really important and keeps us healthy. So all the things that, we talk about keeping good health is also helpful for your immune system to stay strong.
Yeah, yeah. What age group is Immune Heroes targeted mainly for?
Yeah, I targeted for about 4 to 8-year-olds. And my market research is mostly based on my niece, who was 5 at the time and now is a 7.
Well, it's great to have that target audience, that little market research, so you don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars trying to figure it out. But I'm sure also it was fun for you to kind of bounce these ideas off your niece and also have those conversations that we're hoping parents will have with their kids as they're reading Immune Heroes.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm learning now that the book is out. And my brother has told me that they use it in parts of the conversation. Like, you need to wear a coat. It's cold outside. You want to help the Captain T. And then just this morning, I got a note from a friend who said, "Oh, I'm reading your book a lot because we have a lot of knee scrapes in our house for their 3-year-old and 2-year-old." So yeah, it could be a book where if you have a boo-boo during the day, at night, maybe that's the book you choose for bedtime reading.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, do Dr. T and Dr. B, are they fighting super villains or a particular super virus?
Yes, absolutely. The villains are the bacteria in this story. So in this story, we have a little boy who gets a boo-boo, a scrape on his knee, and within minutes, seconds, the immune heroes are activated. Actually, the cry, the pain, is what triggers them. It's their alarm signal to say, hey, something's not right. Let's get to the site. Let's see what's happening. And then we have a parade of different types of heroes coming to and have different superpowers that come to rescue the wound and help protect it, but also try to fight off the bacteria. And we have, in this case, not just one bacteria, but we have to fight off 2 bacteria.
Really, really neat. Yeah, my mind is weird. If you've listened to the show, my mind just, things trigger. And I have this one memory. I've done educational magic shows at schools for 35 years. And I'm not one of those guys who wants to sit backstage and get a big introduction. I'm out there greeting kids as they're coming in. And in a school with 400 or 500 kids, it can take a long time for everybody to come in. So in those cases, I go out and I'm shaking hands. And there was one day in particular at a school in New Jersey, I shook 400 hands walking in. And the last teacher was coming in. I put my hand out to shake her hand. And she said, there's a stomach bug going around this school. I ain't touching you. But thankfully, because I was out in front of, 400 or 500 kids every day, my immune system was pretty strong at that time. And so it didn't bother me. But that was one of the things that happened in the pandemic. I wasn't out there meeting people, and I was getting little coughs and sneezes and bugs much easier.
That's interesting, because I had the opposite, because I felt like I wasn't exposed to other things. So, but yeah, you're right. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
The types of bugs that we're exposed to, and then the frequency of those bugs that we're exposed to can definitely make an impact on your immune system.
Yeah. So for a parent who's sitting, listening to this, thinking, I'm going to get Immune Heroes, and I want to be knowledgeable. So when we're reading the book, I can really speak intelligently about it with my kid. What kind of things can we do as parents? How can we help our kids build up their immune systems?
I think just as we said, like eating healthy foods and getting good sleep. I know sometimes kids don't want to go to bed. That's super important. As we already talked about, washing your hands so that you're not taking bugs or germs that are on your hands that you've been surrounding, that you've touched different places and put them into your body unnecessarily. That's definitely important. And I think that's especially important when they're around other children. When they're coughing or sneezing, cover their mouth so that they're not, again, sending out viruses to their friends. But ultimately the book is written in a way where you can be very naive, and you can read it, and maybe parents will learn a few things too. One of my good friends, she's a cancer survivor, and she says, I always see on my lab reports, neutrophils. I don't know what neutrophils are. I said, well, that will be answered in the book. So, it has a little bit for everybody, but you really can walk into the book without much knowledge.
Yeah. I'm curious. Here you are, a scientist. You must be incredibly busy. Where did you always dream about writing a kid's book, that you made time to put this together?
Honestly, I haven't. I would say I always had a creative side of myself, and I would filter that into different things. Like I spent, a year and a half, like updating my home and, using my creative energy for decorating. But the book kind of came out of time with my brother's family and seeing my niece, ask me questions about what I do for a living, and also being able to read her bedtime stories, and then combining the two. The first book just emerged, out of my brain. And as soon as I started thinking I'm going to do this, then the characters started to roll off my brain as well. And then it was a little bit of finding the right story to tell. So this is just the first story, about what we call the cardinal signs of inflammation. Why is it hurt? Why is it red? Why is it swelling? Why is it kind of warm to touch? So we explain that in this book. And then the other books will be about other fundamental aspects of the immune system and the science of health. And honestly, when I was working on this book, and during the day, I would have maybe a tough day at work where experiments didn't work, or we had tough problems to solve with my day job. When I would get an illustration in my email from my illustrator, it just made me smile, and it made the day so much better. So I really enjoyed the process.
Yeah. You're an immunologist, your day job that you mentioned. What does an immunologist do during the day?
Well, there are probably lots of different types of jobs that an immunologist can do. And as I mentioned, I'm a PhD immunologist, so my PhD is in the study of the immune system, which I'm very passionate about. I just find it so fascinating and so critical to understand medical diseases. And so that's what I do in the day. I work on new therapies. Try to understand the mechanism of action of those therapies and try to link it to the diseases that we think these therapies are going to work the best in. And I've done that for a lot of autoimmune diseases and allergy and asthma, types of diseases, and then even in cancer.
Wow. So are you in there with the vials and the mixing and all that
Not
kind
anymore.
of stuff?
No, not anymore. You can be a scientist without wearing a white coat. And actually it's very strange because, we, use a lot of, resources. The work is very regulated. And so there's lots of FDA requirements and the types of labs have to be certified. And there's a few excellent centers in the world. So we tap into some of those contract resources. Yeah. And so I can work from home. Right now I've been working from home for the past 2 years, talking to my colleagues, on the phone. And honestly, we have to get a lot of brains together to be able to make a drug, and a lot of different disciplines have to come together for it to work.
Wow. I've read, a book not too long ago about the power of self-healing, or the positive mindset, and it makes what was that? It's the placebo effect. The placebo effect. Now, is in your line of research, do you see that there is such a thing as a placebo effect, and that our thoughts can help us heal?
Absolutely. So in my line of work, we think about our clinical trials, and we want to reduce the placebo effect. So we have certain strategies we use in clinical trials to kind of make it so objective. And that's what we use in, every day, in the work setting. But in my personal setting, I always tell my friends and colleagues, I love a placebo effect, because if you're feeling better, then that's the most important thing. So, I hope that no one ever has to take the medicines that we make. But if you do get sick, then hope to know that, we take a lot of, rigor to make medicines these days.
Yeah. Awesome. One of the most unique experiences I ever had in my life, my daughter, when she was in high school, she went to an international high school. And because of that, because there were kids from all over the world, she'd have these big extended vacations. And she would come out on the road with me. And that was a lot of fun. And we also hosted some of the international students. In one year, we had a young medical student with us for a few months. And she decided to come out on the road with me and my daughter. So we're out traveling the country, doing magic shows for 3 weeks, and we're down in Atlanta. And the medical student went down to the lobby of the hotel just to do some work, and she met someone who told her that the CDC has a disease museum.
Oh.
And she came up and she said, "Jed, can we go to the disease museum?" And
wow.
I said, "Sure." And it was the most fascinating and also terrifying. Because we're in and we're seeing these exhibits, and there was nobody else in the museum except for us, and we had to go through these security procedures. Thank goodness to get into the CDC. They actually searched the entire van. They searched us, and we're in there, and I'm looking. Oh, this is amazing. We have discovered how to cure this and that and that and. Oh, but all those diseases are right up over our head. Oh, I hope it doesn't get out.
I know. It's one of the most complicated puzzles to solve. It keeps me perplexed and challenged every day. And then a few of them I've been able to work on a drug that's been really transformative. So I've been happy with that story and my contributions to that story. But really, it was a massive team effort, and took over 10 years.
Are you able to tell us what you?
Sure, yeah. I work on a drug called Dupixent.
Oh,
and it's you may have seen commercials for it, because I see commercials for it all the time.
Yeah, that's for tell me, I can't.
Well, it started out for atopic dermatitis or eczema, and then it also works in asthma, and then what I was able to help contribute to is it works for nasal polyposis, or nasal polyps that are in your nose, and you have sinuses that are inflamed. And we learned that all these different diseases that are manifesting in completely different organs, like in your lung or in your skin or in your sinuses, it's kind of the same biology. So the same drug can work.
Wow.
Yeah. And what was also rewarding about the nasal polyps is that they were treating it with surgery, a very dangerous surgery that now they don't have to, because the polyps would come back anyways after surgery. So this kind of helps the patient feel better. Yeah. We also know that the company now, since I've left the company, has even gone further on diseases that we had talked about, like COPD and other allergic diseases, other skin diseases as well. So it's a really exciting project that I feel very proud to have been a part of.
Yeah, wow, that is so cool. And I love the fact that I mentioned to Dr. Namita before the show, my niece is studying biomedical engineering, and I love that we have a woman, intelligent woman, as a great role model for young girls like my niece. Well, she's not a girl, she's a young woman. And I think that this would be a great topic to kind of, as you're reading Immune Heroes with your kid, it's like, you're a little girl. You can grow up and be an immunologist yourself. You can be anything you want to be, and you don't have to shatter the ceiling, the glass ceiling yourself, because women have already done that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, absolutely. And there's so many careers that you can't even imagine, especially in biotech, hundreds of different types of things. So you don't have to wear a lab coat. You don't have to feel that you aren't creative, because I feel like we're creative all the time. In solving problems. So.
Yeah. Awesome. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Immune Heroes and find out more about you.
Well, thanks so much. Yes, Immune Heroes is available on Amazon, so you can search through that. And then you can also find more information about me at immuneheroes.com on our website.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Immune Heroes. Our guest has been Dr. Namita Gandhi. Hey, Dr. Namita, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Well, I'm imagine one of the things I love to talk to authors about, especially of authors of YA titles, is what kind of conversations can a parent and child have if they read Changes in Latitude simultaneously. We don't expect them to be cuddled up on the couch like you did with Dr. Seuss, but if you're reading it simultaneously and having conversations at dinner time or on the way to school in the minivan, what kind of conversations do you think folks can have?
Oh, that is a great question. I think specific to this book, a real, I would say the central plot of the story is Cassie and her mom, and both of them trying to find their way back to each other after a lot of their relationship complications are caused by assumptions that both parties are making without really communicating what's actually going on. And so I think that, I certainly looked at a typical, what I would consider typical, if there is any such thing, mother-daughter, teen years especially, relationship and how fraught those can be, as well as how close. It's certainly when I was drafting this, my daughter and I were binge watching Gilmore Girls and seeing that example of a relationship. So sort of the push-pull of how close and then get how far apart. And so I think in this, what I really wanted to explore is that idea of there's no villain. The mom is not the villain in the story. Cassie is extremely upset with her. But yet when she comes to understand sort of what happened and some of the things that her mom shielded her from in an effort to protect her, their relationship really changes throughout the course of the story. And I think that that's, even though those circumstances would be fairly unusual, I would assume. I think that the theme of it is fairly universal, particularly for mothers and daughters.
Yeah. And I love that idea. I think it would be just really helpful just to have a conversation about the fact, hey, there's no villain in this story, just like in many situations in life.
Well, sure. And even, particularly for parents, it's one of those, and I used to roll my eyes so hard when my parents would say, I'm only on your case because I care. If I didn't care, why would I care if you did your homework or not? I'm only bothering you about it because I want you to do well in life, and I care about the repercussions that you maybe can't see. And now when I say those things to my own kids, and I realize how, I'm in different shoes then, and I'm going, oh God, right. But of course, at the time, my parents were the villains because they were keeping me from doing whatever I would have rather been doing at that time. And I think some of it maybe you can't ever understand until the roles are reversed, but some of it maybe, is helpful to sort of at least present some concept of, oh, wait, maybe this is a matter of perspective, and shifting it changes the whole story.
Well, we always talk about books, being a great way to help kids develop empathy and put themselves in the shoes of others. And it could be very helpful for a young, intelligent teenage girl to put herself in her parents' shoes for a minute. Right. And vice versa.
No, I think you're right. I think that one of the things that I probably didn't realize as a kid was how young my mom must have felt. Like I still feel like a teenager most days. So the idea that my kid couldn't relate to me is somewhat shocking, because I'm like, but I'm just like you. I just don't speak the same slang. So yeah, no, I think that sort of role reversal does hopefully create some empathy and some, even just, understanding. We're all in our little bubbles at the moment. And so even just being able to sort of see what someone else's motivations might be can be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I also want to make sure we spend some time talking about the best night ever, which is unusual because it was created by 7 different authors.
Yes, 7 of us.
Wow, that must have been just exciting, that whole process, or frustrating, or
Yes to all of that. No, it was. I mean, initially there are 7 of us who, even before we were published, were trading manuscript reads and offering each other support and things like that. And just really somewhat by coincidence, somewhat is to be expected, because we all sort of write similar light and funny stories for tweens, which is what this is. This is for a 9 to 12-year-old audience. Best night ever. We all ended up publishing with the same imprint at Simon & Schuster. And so, we would joke about, we need to write something together. And we had always, when I was joking about it, I was envisioning an anthology of stories that we each contribute one to. But our publisher loved the idea of us all working together, but not so much the idea of an anthology. And so they sort of sent us back to the drawing table, and that landed me on the idea of doing something in the vein of, we sort of pitched it as a Love Actually concept, where it's 7 storylines and 7 characters telling the story, but they're all intertwined. And they all take place at the same middle school dance, or on the night of a middle school dance. One of the characters is in another state, so she can't be there. But all centered on this. So there's a lot of overlap in each other's chapters, the other characters appearing and so forth. So it's really one continuous story. It's not 7 separate stories, but they are told from 7 different perspectives. And again, it goes back to that idea of how different characters experience the same set of circumstances. So that's something that I love playing with, is that idea of perspective. Yeah.
Well, I imagine that must be a fascinating story, because I have this amazing memory. I was asked to chaperone a field trip for my son's class when he was in 8th grade. And it was a walking tour of Boston, and you're familiar with Boston and the Freedom Trail and everything. So there are these long periods. Yeah, so you'd have to walk for 15, 20 minutes. And I actually witnessed a couple, this 8th grade couple, break up and get back together and break up about 5 times in the course of one day.
Sounds about right. That's scandalous.
Well, yeah, it was. My mind was just. By the end of the day, I was just shaking my head and said, "What? Why are you doing this?"
Aren't you glad we don't age backwards sometimes?
Thank you. Well, rumor has it some of us do at some point.
That's true. Yes. And certainly we have those characters in our story. There's not a huge romantic subplots, but some of our characters do have some crushes and so forth going on. And it definitely, over the course of one night, as you mentioned, especially in 8th grade, time exists differently. And so, there can be all of that drama in one night that would probably take the rest of us several months to process. That is a typical tween night.
At least, yeah. I imagine it would be, and I've just recently had actually she's a teen now, 13, but she just came into our life, and she's amazing, and I love spending time with her, but it's like, whoa, this is a new experience. My daughter's 21, but she didn't kind of go through what my new friend is going through, and it's just, sometimes my head feels like it's going to explode.
I'm sure nothing compared to what hers feels like too.
I
right?
know.
No, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really drawn to writing for and about this age group. That sort of as young as 7 and obviously young adult readers, age all the way up into adulthood, but characters of that age, because all of the drama is heightened and the emotions and so many of those things are happening for the first time. And that makes it just so much more emotional. And also offers those characters less cynicism about it because they've never gone through this before. So they don't have the perspective of, yeah, but you're going to have 20 boyfriends before you turn 25. So the first one doesn't really matter. It does. It matters so much. And so I think, that's one of the things that really attracts me to writing about this age group is the height of the drama and the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. As an author really lets you do a lot.
Yeah. Wow. And as a parent, I think it would be great research just to read it and just kind of prepare yourself for what your life could be like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I hope that it's made me a bit of a better parent because it forces me to really put myself in the mindset of those characters and remember what it felt like to be 13 or to be 12 or 16. And just remember all those emotions in a way that I don't think I would if I weren't spending, days and hours and months in those characters' heads. So hopefully that lets me sympathize a little more with my kids when the drama starts on our end. But I don't know. I don't know if I can say that for sure. Some days.
Well, perhaps in 10 years there'll be a new writer writing about those experiences.
Right, exactly.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Please be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can connect with us to all of our social media sites through our website, readingwithyourkids.com. And you can also send us a message by using the contact button at the top of the page. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guests, Kaitlin Hill, Dr. Namita Gandhi, and Jen Malone. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Judy Hu. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support she gives me, but most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you on the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.